Okay, are we live?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to Thursday, September 23rd, Downtown Advisory Board meeting. We've got a action-packed information reports today, so thank you for making time to be here, Patricia and Seth and Kristen, will be coming later. Opening exercises, introduction to board members. I'm Josh Kay. I am chairing. Would we like to make other introductions as well before we approve the agenda?
I'd like to introduce Caleb. Let me turn my camera back on. This is Caleb.
Hello,
he is our new staff assistant. He will be assisting with boards in this department and will be my backup if I'm not here.
Hi, Caleb. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the City of Salem. Alan, you are back.
You send me the link.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you. Alan Pollock with Chariots was on the board a while ago, and I guess I'm back. Yeah, repeat performance.
Happy to have you here. Summer.
Hello, I'm Summer Keatley from the Infinity Room downtown across from the Grand Hotel.
Thanks for being here. Patricia and Seth, you can introduce yourselves on your information reports. We've got Jordan and Aaron and Charles.
Hello.
Everybody.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Summer seconds. All those in favor of approving the agenda, unless there's any discussion, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All those not in favor? None. Motion passes. We have an approved agenda. Now the approval of the minutes from the July 22nd meeting.
I move to approve.
This is
Second.
Jordan. I'll second.
Aaron moves, Summer and Jordan seconded. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes from our July 22nd meeting, say aye.
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 Those in favor say nay. Motion passes. Action items, none. That'll change. It's going to be a very exciting 2022. Information report, so we can slide right into Patricia Farrell's information report of the Climate Action Plan update.
Hey, Josh, can I stop you right there? Because I wanted to see if, Rebecca, are you available?
I'm still trying to get her the link.
Okay, never mind. I wanted Rebecca to do an announcement real quick before information reports, but she can pop in between speakers when we have a pause. So thank you. You go ahead, Patricia. Thanks so much.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm sharing my screen here now. So good afternoon, noon. My name is Patricia Farrell. I'm normally the Parks and Natural Resources Planning Manager. I'm also, for the last 18 months, the Climate Action Plan Manager. So thank you for letting me come here today and present where we are in the Climate Action Plan. Hopefully some of you are familiar with it already. We just had a council work session about it on Monday. Can you see my screen okay? Okay, great. So we began the project last August in last year, and this was followed by hiring a consultant, Vertis Group. And then in October of last year, City Council set these two goals, and this really set the framework for our climate action plan. So the first one is based on our 2016 emission levels. The goal is to reduce those 50% by 2035. And the second goal is to become carbon neutral city by 2050. So basically any carbon emissions are either gone or they are offset in some other way. So the climate action plan is actually two pieces, two components to it. The first one is mitigation, which is actually the actions to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And the second component of it is to adapt to the impacts of climate change that we are already experiencing and that we will continue to experience. And so this is kind of the resilience, known as the resilience or adaptation part of the plan. So there's those two pieces that will be in the plan. And a lot of the strategies are related to the resilience part, as well as the GHG reduction. The other pieces of the plan are going to be identifying key partners in the plan, because not all of them are under the purview of the city itself. For instance, Chariots, glad to see you're here today. Chariots is going to be one of our key partners, as well as the utility companies, PGE in particular, to try to help us get to some of our goals that we're setting. And then the other part is to prioritize actions. And that's kind of the point where we are right now in the project. So one of the first things we did was we set up a task force. It's larger than normally we would have for the city, but the purpose of having such a broad group was to get a lot of different representation across different groups in the community. So we wanted to make sure that we were focused on equity. And so we had several groups that represent the Indigenous community, the NAACP, the Latino community, as well as business, energy. You can see the list there. It's quite extensive and it's been very productive. Everything's been on Zoom, which has actually worked really well. And we also have 3 city councilors on it, Councilors Nordyke, Gonzalez, and Anderson, as well as some city staff members who are kind of subject matter experts, so they can weigh in as well if there's questions that come up. And so we have that list there. And this group has been met 5 times with multiple hour task force meetings with some optional meetings thrown in. And we have one more task force meeting coming up at the end of October. So I mentioned our greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a diagram showing where the sources of those emissions come from. So it's they come from primarily the burning of fossil fuels, which comes primarily in our case and in most cities' cases comes from transportation. The rest, a lot of it comes from electricity generation and also stationary combustion, which is basically natural gas or diesel or propane. And then a smaller percentage comes from our wastewater, which is in the form of methane. And then a smaller amount even from waste also comes in the form of methane often. So that's the source of it. This inventory was done in 2019, and it was using the 2016 data. So it's already, a little bit out of date. For instance, electricity, since the inventory was done, PGE has closed their last coal-fired plant out in Boardman. And so that has already shifted. So one of the first things we need to do is kind of get up to date on more recent data. This is just to list one of the things that we found out during the climate action plan was to do a vulnerability assessment. And what it determined was that for Salem in particular, these are the things that we are facing through climate change. We already have experienced many of these things. And so the list here is probably not surprising. I guess the one thing that we are trying to keep a focus on is that these are not experienced equally across the community. For instance, people who have to work outside or who are houseless and living outside, they can experience the hazardous air quality more extremely than others who can go inside and turn on air purifiers, or if they're outside, they're going to experience those extreme heat days. That's going to be a greater impact to them. And so we're trying to keep a focus on that with our strategies, that we want to make sure that they're equitable and that we focus on groups that really are impacted as well. So as far as the risks, both sides of the extreme are potentially going to be felt. There's going to be increased microbursts, intense storms, rain that comes in periods where we're not typically expecting it. For instance, just that last weekend there was kind of that intense rain that happened. Normally doesn't happen, this early in the year. Sometimes you're caught unprepared for things like that. So places that didn't flood typically might become inundated in situations like that. The flip side is drought. Currently the city or the state is all in some stage of level of drought. And that impacts food production and workers and water quality as well. The other thing is that extreme fire days, high risk days are going to increase. And of course, warming temperatures are going to become more common. What's considered excessive heat is anything above 90 degrees. And this year alone, we've had 24 days over 90 degrees and some days of over 100 degrees. So that's a concern. It especially affects children and elders, and again, people who are living or working outside. The other impact of extreme heat is this urban heat island effect, which is where the heat builds up in the cities, in areas that don't have a lot of tree cover, have a lot of impervious paved areas, and that heat gets absorbed by those impervious surfaces, and then it radiates back out at night. And so the cities don't cool off as quickly. And so that's also related to tree canopy as well. This is just a map showing our urban heat islands in Salem. You can see kind of the heat map. And so here's the airport. So obviously this one is red because it has no trees, and it has impervious surfaces that reflect heat. The downtown core is definitely one of those areas, but you can also see that, Northeast is very much affected by the urban heat island impacts, whereas in South Salem, it's a little bit less, more tree cover, more open space, things like that. So it is an equity issue as well. So some of the economic impacts of climate change are listed here. Those things such as flooding and drought and wildfire smoke, they can impact the public health and the workforce. There's concern about energy grid capacity. We had the ice storm, the electrical grid, went down for a period of time. Wildfire smoke, it's been affecting tourism and outdoor recreation. I mentioned water supply. Drought and also water quality can be affected by that. And then there's other things such as supply chain disruption. If any of those things happen and like food can't get through or stores are closed for whatever reason, that can lead to kind of a cascading effect. So we've been working on the climate action plan and getting a lot of feedback from the public and from the task force and from experts on the subject. And we've grouped the strategies into these 7 different buckets. And so because transportation and energy are our main sources of GHG, there's a lot of emphasis on those 2 categories. And this is just a list of some of the ideas on the right-hand side that are coming out in the climate action plan about ways to improve our resiliency and reduce our GHG. This is still a work in progress. I'm not even sure if these numbers are still correct, but last time I checked, we had about 180 different strategies in there. So it's quite a long list of different components. And this is what it looks like if you go to the website, which is up here, listed up here if you're interested, salemclimateactionplan.com. And then our strategy list is there. And this is the energy page. And so you can scroll through and look at the strategies. And then we've also done kind of a rough estimate of what is the potential to impact our greenhouse gas reduction. So it's low, medium, high. And then cost is also very rough, up to from between $1 and $4 signs. We've assigned a lead agency. For instance, I mentioned our partners. So sometimes these are not things the city would do, but for instance, Chariots would do, or Energy Trust of Oregon, or another nonprofit might do. And then the other things we're looking at are co-benefits, because some of these things kind of cut across different different aspects. And then the last is kind of a rough timeline. So we can start to sort the list by some of these different categories. If we're looking for kind of things we need to do quickly that have high GHG, we can sort this list once we get it finalized and kind of get the first steps towards an implementation plan. So here's some of the high impact reduction strategies that we have so far. Just so you can see, some of them are, kind of conserving energy in existing buildings, using some energy benchmarking in new buildings to let people know kind of what kind of ranking they have, how much insulation, how good are the windows, what's the source of energy, also weatherizing buildings. A big one is also a push, not just in energy, but in transportation, to push towards all electric, which means also switching from natural gas, either when at a point where people, their appliances wear out and they're looking for new ones. Is there ways we can incentivize the purchase of electric ones, or requiring new construction to be all electric and not use natural gas. So I know this can be somewhat controversial, so I wanted to make that be transparent, that these are some of the strategies that are in there. And we've been told that really, in order to get to the goals, that switching as much as possible to electric is one of the key things we need to do. Same with transportation, to incentivize electric vehicles, which the state is also working on. A big one is to expand our public transit infrastructure. So that's where I was mentioning chariots, because that's a key entity to help in implementing that. And the city, how can we support that in the city so that we get more frequent, maybe different routes that people need to get to and from work. So looking at it kind of as a whole system. And then also a key thing also with the comprehensive plan update, our Salem project, is increasing urban density along some of those transportation core corridors that are in existence now and that maybe would be in the future. And so try to increase urban density along those so people are less inclined to drive and more inclined to take the bus where they need to go. The other thing is also other forms of transportation, such as walking and biking, or working from home, for instance. All of those things, basically try to get people away from driving single occupancy internal combustion cars. Here's one I know that you'll be interested in, which is charging for downtown parking. So, one of the ideas is to incentivize people to take other forms, but also to maybe make it a little more difficult or make people less inclined to drive downtown if they're relying on free parking. So charge for downtown parking because there is good access using other modes of transportation. So here's where we are in the process. I mentioned we've had 5 task force meetings. We just finished the council work session on Monday. We have another task force to talk about implementation and the latest list of strategies, which is we're still working on. That's the end of October. And then we're going to boards and commissions such as this one as much as possible, and any other groups that want presentations, with the goal of bringing this to City Council on December 6th for approval. And then the hard work of implementation begins. But we're still open for ideas. So if you go to the website listed up here, there's a spot where you can click. You can either look through the existing strategies, you can add comments, you can click on the heart if you like the idea, or you can add a new one by clicking on this little light bulb card, and it will be added. And so we're going to take all these. It's going to be open. This has been open all summer. It's going to close on October 3rd. So if you want to take a shot at adding some new ideas, that would be great. Or also to see if you like any of the ones that are already proposed. They're not all 180 there, just to in case you don't want to go through all 180. And so again, here's kind of what the schedule is. Getting kind of close to the end, which is exciting. and I will take any questions or comments.
Looks like a lot of work and a lot of thought is going into that.
Yes, indeed. And, we've been refining a lot of the strategies because the wording sometimes is not correct. We'll get feedback from, for instance, PG or Energy Trust, or we had a meeting over in the West Salem redevelopment group, and they had some suggestions, actually a new idea about switching, trying to transition their businesses, which often are a combination of electric and natural gas. They had some good suggestions about, what would it take for them to transition, what kind of incentives. And so I'd be interested if, from your business perspective, if there's anything that kind of comes to mind about anything that raises concerns or that you have some ideas about, or Alan, anything. Hopefully this isn't a surprise to you. Ian Davidson is in our group. I see your hand is up.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I was rotating the wrist.
Oh no, Alan's hand was up. I was going to say.
Apologize.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, first off, thanks for the presentation. This was great. It'd be great if we could get a copy of the slides.
Sure.
Too. So, yeah, I've been kind of tangentially following along with Ian. We get increasing transit usage is a great strategy, and I see in there, from the city perspective, in increasing transit infrastructure to help with that, which is great because one of the big barriers is access to bus stops, especially sidewalks, and even a lot of our paratransit rides, the ones in the vans, we have to provide those because especially people in wheelchairs don't have access to the bus stops because of lack of good sidewalk. So that is an important component of that. And of course, we'll have lots of discussions because increased public transit means more service, which means someone has to pay for that. And how does that happen? But one of the questions I have, and you talked about the switching to electricity and away from natural gas. Was there any discussion with the group, or was it brought up with the advent of renewable natural gas now? Is it an interim measure or is it an alternative measure? So there isn't a shut down all natural gas, but encouraging the use of renewable natural gas as opposed to just regular natural gas. It's probably not as clean as electricity, but it's a good next step, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And Northwest Natural Gas is on the task force, and so they have been sharing their plans for how to increase that access to renewable natural gas. There's been a lot of debate about it kind of internally with the group, about, is that really what it says it is, and is it really a good kind of a bridge? Because it's usually capturing methane is my understanding, and then reusing that. And so where do you get the sources of that? Like, we are actually doing that out at our wastewater treatment plant. We just started a new cogeneration process where we're capturing that methane and turning it into electricity. So I'd say there is a role for it. I know that, some of your buses run off of that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, so about half our fleet is natural gas buses, and we use renewable natural gas to fuel those. Uh-huh. Which we switched, it's been about a year from compressed natural gas to renewable compressed natural gas. Uh-huh.
And so you've already kind of taken one step to move towards, getting away from just burning gasoline.
Correct. Yeah, well, we don't burn any gasoline because the other half of our fleet runs on biodiesel, but we are transitioning those buses to electric. We have 10 electric buses on order, which will be here sometime next year to start that transition with the electric buses.
Oh, okay, that's great to know. Yeah, what I've been hearing from businesses that use a lot of natural gas, and from, larger like trucking industries, is that it's difficult to make that transition. But it could possibly happen piecemeal. But I think batteries is kind of one of the problems right now. But I think that, over the next few years, there's going to be like great strides made in better battery storage and the ability to go longer and to power bigger pieces of equipment as well. So there's a lot of things in play right now.
Just a general comment. I think it's admirable work. I remember when they were talking about getting the process started some years ago, and they were saying that Salem's the biggest city that doesn't even have a climate action plan. They were sourcing Eugene that had it, and obviously Portland that had it, but we didn't have one. And I guess my general comment is, at what point, you could make it as big as you can, but at what point does the state have their climate action plan or goals and processes and functions? I mean, at what point does the city's scope or purview stop? When you talk about critical infrastructure like natural gas, when there's, a natural gas meter on, I don't know what the statistic is, 80, 90% of homes, and the bold strategy of transitioning to electricity. I mean, I just feel like at what point does the city's purview stop in saying, okay, here's the scope of the work, here's our plan, here's our aggressive goals. Maybe they're realistic, maybe they're not, but it just would seem that at what point do you say, okay, this is enough for how far we're willing to take it? Because there's massive implications with construction, with business, with, even half the fleet, it is renewable, it sounds like, but even our public transportation system, there's so much impact and concerns of legality and all those things are being weighed, I'm sure. But general comment, I guess there's a question in there. Maybe you have some feedback.
No, those are great comments. And in fact, we are having a meeting on September 28th, so next week, with the state's sustainability coordinator, because the state, as you mentioned, is doing a lot of things right now. There's a lot of things in play. They passed some recent bills that impact the electric, trying the EV charging station network, and as well as getting residential areas EV ready in new construction. So there's a lot of things in play right now and some things that haven't been decided. And so what we're trying to do in the strategy list is make a note on those that say, the state is working on this, or this is based on, House Bill 2021 or whichever one it is, so that we are falling in line with what the state is doing as it kind of works its way down to the municipalities. So we're not at cross purposes that way. So yes, we're definitely trying to make clear that at some of these levels, it's not the city's responsibility, or even it's not even legal necessarily. It has to come from the state first, and then the city implements. There are opportunities for the city to do more than what the state is suggesting, which is called like a reach code or a stretch code, or I don't know, maybe some of you know more about that than I do. So there are points where we can do just what the state says, or we could try to do a little more depending on political willpower. But it really is going to come down to the city council to decide what they want to implement and what they want to focus on as we move this plan forward.
Thank you. Sheree?
Hi, Sheree.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things that has always baffled me is why, being the second largest city, DEQ isn't here for vehicles to go through. And I don't even see it on your list. And all you have to do is drive behind a car that is spewing because their rings are burned out or who knows what. When I inquired about this, when I worked in Portland, I was told that when they implemented this, people in political positions took a map, and every place that they lived, because they didn't want to go through DEQ, was carved out. But I think Salem being the second largest city, I'm very surprised that this is not on there, because when you talk about, I mean, that would be fairly easy, I would think, to do, is put a DEQ center up and make sure that people are not running at admission levels that exceed what is preferred in other larger communities. So that's my first question, and I would recommend that get put on the list.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't even noticed that that's, and I don't know what the process is to do that, but I can certainly add that to the list. That's a good point.
Yeah. And again, if you don't, people never bring that up, because if you've never had to do it,
Right.
if you've never had a car that is older and you can't get it through DEQ and you have to get a temporary permit for months and months and months until you figure out how to get your carburation. Sorry, car freak. If you don't have to endure that pain and get the gut ache knowing if you're going to go through or not DEQ, it's never going to be on the list. But I think for this particular project, that it's super easy, because it's, you know, a couple of buildings that stick a tube up your muffler and capture the, you know, what your emission is. It wouldn't take a lot, you know what I mean? It'd be an easy thing to start doing to get people more aware here of what a vehicle does to contribute to.
Right. Well, and also that's one of the things we were talking about is, like, as you move forward, there's always going to be that kind of that sliver of the pie that is the older vehicles that people are holding on to for whatever reason. And, you know, part of it maybe is that they don't have to go through that pain of getting their emissions tested.
Yeah. And then the other piece I think that's kind of relevant to Downtown Advisory Board is one of those recommendations was to put paid parking in. So when this goes to council, will the next steps be, they will be taking a look at, would that then come back from council to somebody to start looking into that type of implementing that? I mean, most of the board members are interested in that, and as far as paid parking. So I'm just trying to figure out if this will raise awareness, because it's now coming from a different voice, a high priority project from the city. Do you have a sense about how the next steps might play out on those things that are being suggested that we implement by 2025 and 2050?
Yeah, so the plan itself is not, it's not a mandate to do anything, you know, it's a list of potential actions. So it's going to be up to council to decide, you know, we can rank them any way they want to see the data, but like that strategy that you mentioned is a high GHG reduction strategy, and it's under the purview of the city. So those are two things that they would look at, I think, as far as like saying, okay, here's something where we can start, you know. And then, as you said, then it would need to go to, you know, the people that need to figure out how to implement it, you know, your group, the Downtown Advisory Group, whatever, whoever those subject matter experts might be, to figure out, you know, kind of that implementation strategy, how to roll something like that out.
Okay. Well, Josh, does anybody else have any questions? I know we have other speakers lined up.
Oh, just one other comment or question, which would be, and under the purview of Downtown Advisory Board with what's being considered, if it's going to be required energy code upgrades, building upgrades with that purpose, with GHG reduction, it would seem practical and prudent for staff to take a look at including those as a part of the downtown urban renewal area grant programs. So something to consider as we add those to the list of what's an acceptable improvement or scope. So I would think that would be congruent to any type of I don't want to call it a burden being placed, but I'll say a cost being placed on, because there's a cost to every one of these decisions. So if there's no other questions, we can move on to Seth. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We love talking about economic development, Seth.
Great. Me too.
Go ahead.
Nice. So my name is Seth Leonards. I'm with the Economic Development Division. I'm sure many of you know Annie Gorski, so I report directly to Annie. And as you know, the city is planning. We've been doing a lot of planning lately. So here's one more that we have. This is our Economic Development Strategy and COVID-19 Business Recovery Plan. And this is an update to the 2011 Economic Development Strategy that we have. So just a quick overview of the agenda. I'll keep this pretty high level, 10 to 15 minutes or so. And we'll leave some time at the end if folks want to ask questions. So I just want to give a little bit of context to this plan and how it fits into the city's overall planning efforts. The city develops plans and strategies to guide priorities for spending and staff time. The city has an adopted strategic plan, which guides priorities across city functions. And when approved, this plan will guide staff time, work with community organizations and partners, and funding priorities for the city's economic development division. To develop this draft, we've done a lot of research with community organizations, including LBA, Small Business Development Center, and Willamette Workforce Partnership. Sorry, give me one quick second. I'm sorry, I just got a quick call. Can I come back and pop in a minute here?
Yeah, no problem.
Great, thanks.
Patrice, or geez, Freudian slip. Cherie, you said there was an announcement from Rebecca that you wanted to squeeze in. You're on mute. Oh, and Kristen's here. Hi, Kristen.
Yes, I wanted to take Seth's minute and have Rebecca do an announcement. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Great. Okay, perfect. So we have some exciting news. One of our fellow board members, Charles, I know, who could it be, Charles? So we applied for, Sheree and I applied for the Demura Awards through Restore Oregon. They're a statewide nonprofit in historic preservation, and they give out, it's a pretty competitive process. They give out 10 awards every year for really, really, really amazing preservation-related projects, building structures, that sort of a thing. And Fork 40, the Gray Bell building, won. So, which is extremely exciting news. I think that there was, Sheree had mentioned to me, I haven't read it yet, but that there is an article in the Statesman Journal today regarding not so much the Demura Award, but more in line with the history. I believe the Statesman Journal interviewed Kimberly Fitzgerald. So it's taking a little bit more of that kind of a component to it. But next week, Restore Oregon staff is going to be coming up to Salem to hand off the plaque, and the Statesman Journal will be there as well to take photos. And it originally was supposed to be given at this gala that happens every fall called the Restoration Celebration up in Portland, but it has been postponed due to COVID. So it's not canceled, but it is going to be held back. Most likely will be at Revolutionary Hall in January. So, and that's like a really swanky, fun party, and it'll be a great way to show off Charles's great project. So this is very, very big news for Salem, for Charles, for the building, and just a great job well done. So.
Thank you.
Well, and yeah, no, thank you, but they really didn't quote me well, because I said specifically Rebecca did all the work, and they just said he attributes the success to her. I thank Cherie, I thank Kristen, I thanked Urban Development and the city, and they kind of skimmed over that. So you guys really, I mean, it wouldn't have been possible without you, and certainly wouldn't have had the award without all of Rebecca's work. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a big award.
Project, right, Rebecca?
I'm sorry?
We have to have a property owner who does what Charles did to be able to submit something.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Charles, I just quoted you in the application. I just submitted an application. That's all Sheree and I did. So you did all the work, but team effort for sure, right? And it's something that we do want. You know, there's a lot of really amazing projects that happen in downtown Salem, and typically Kimberly Fitzgerald at the city, this is more her purview. But when their staff is overloaded, it's something that if something remarkable is happening in downtown, we do want to be able to apply for awards like this. And a lot of amazing things are happening. So this is just the beginning. So congrats, Charles.
We all know how much work that was. I remember when you went through the process of the Historic Landmarks Commission, when you were picking out your materials for that, and how much work it was to develop that site. So.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Awesome. Well, Seth, you've joined us again.
Yes, sorry about that. Josh, you having a little one, you will like the joys of having little ones. I'll just leave it there. Cool. Okay, so regarding the plan, COVID-19 impacts on the economy. Most of you know these. Let me just like buzz through a few of them that have really kind of impact the plan. Workforce, you know, we have a higher unemployment rate with workforce shortages, where these barriers to employment, they're trying to get through health, financial, practical, childcare, any of those are getting there. The second one is just this switch that we've gone to like a remote work, just the transition to remote work, remote life, and how that's disrupted supply chains, office space, retail space, and really how we have this need for higher quality broadband internet. So that being said, just a little bit of context. These are the 8 themes that we've developed in the plan.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want to share your slides, share your screen?
Are you not seeing it?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, I just didn't share. My fault. Oh.
There we go.
Okay.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, let me get this started again. Cool. So these are the 8 themes that we came up with. And this basically came through a number of outreach meetings that we've been doing since really like November of last year. And then it's also continuing on some of the work that we've done in the past. So at this point, I'll just kind of like run through all 8 of these, give like a quick couple minutes on them, kind of at a high level. So the first one is affordable workforce housing. We're anticipating 60,000 new residents by 2035. And those folks need a place to live. So in here, we're looking at, collecting data on what is really our housing need, looking at redevelopment sites, and what incentives can we offer to spur that development. Available land for businesses, we're looking at like commercial and industrial lands. And again, with this, we want to look at like what available land do we have for commercial industrial uses, and then looking for federal grants to help with more challenging sites. So for example, if you have a brownfield or something like that, you can go and get some federal funds to help do some of the early planning to develop those sites. And then looking at the reuse of sites due to changing market forces. For example, downtown, we're seeing the Nordstrom building switching from retail to a housing use. The next one we had is broadband internet. And this is a tricky one for us because broadband is primarily run by private internet service providers. So for this, we really want to partner with those internet service providers, look for anywhere there's gaps in services, and ways that we can, improve service for all users within the community so they can easily connect to broadband internet. And then looking at internally at our own city policies and permitting, is there things that we can do to reduce the friction for these internet service providers to provide their service. Supporting existing businesses, this is really like BRE, business retention and expansion. So even the most successful businesses still need help from time to time, whether that's finding employees or they're expanding their business. Sometimes they have these great opportunities and they might need like a little bit of funding or something to kind of take them to the next step. And we as a city want to be there for them when that's happening. So to do this, we're looking at programs, making sure they're equitable, that everyone can access them, focusing on businesses when they really need the most help. So for example, like small or emerging companies. Part of this is just having these regular check-ins with businesses. So we've been doing these kind of quarterly roundtable meetings with businesses to see kind of what challenges they're having. And then working with businesses hit hardest by COVID-19 really in the last year. We spent a lot of time with leisure and hospitality businesses, kind of helping them, getting them grants. The downtown program has done a lot of work as well, helping those businesses to operate. Entrepreneurship, this just refers to like our new and emerging businesses. And, what we know about entrepreneurs is really they need like three things. They need access to capital, money, mentorship and training opportunities. And then they just need this like larger ecosystem of events and resources who can support them, who can support their businesses. So one of the things that we're talking about here is just like a startup funding toolbox that would just be all the available resources of funding at different stages of your business. We have developed an angel fund that was launched in the last year. It's pretty exciting. A $50,000 angel fund that came together, and a second one is just launching now. That's $60,000, and that'll be an ongoing fund available for startup businesses. We want to continue to support entrepreneurial events. That's been a little tricky through COVID, but we'll kind of see what the next year is looking like for that. And then increasing engagement with underserved entrepreneurs. I don't think, we've always done the best connecting with Latino entrepreneurs or Russian entrepreneurs. So we might kind of make extra efforts to engage these communities. Workforce development, this is just really looking at employees, workers, and it refers to like trainings or helping people get the skills they need for the jobs available within our community. And as we know now, like many Salem businesses are hiring, looking for workers right now. So what can we do to kind of help fill that gap? And some of the key highlights of our initiatives there is like focusing on the next generation of workers. So really kind of looking at like high school age workers and gaining them, exposure to the workplace, looking at historically unemployed groups, and then removing those barriers to getting people back to work. So we're hearing like, childcare is really an issue to getting folks back to work. So we're looking at ways that we can expand childcare options. So recruitment, in this, the state generally sets goals for how much land cities should have available for job centers. In Salem, most of this is at Mill Creek, and that land is filling up quickly or is under contract. So, I think recruitment's going to start looking a little bit different for us over the next few years. But we really just want to continue to be a competitive place for new businesses to come here. So a lot of recruitment happens with SEDCOR, and so we'll continue to work with them on recruitment. We'll review our target industries and make sure those are still up to date and accurate. Review the incentive programs that we have. And then we also want to do some different marketing. So I think we're planning on doing some videos soon, and some other ways to just kind of promote Salem and attract folks here. Speaking on that of promoting Salem, We'll continue to kind of refine and promote Salem's brand, and then align our efforts with Travel Salem and kind of other organizations that are doing city promotion, kind of tourism, things like that. And then looking at sharing the stories of our underserved businesses. And then again, like updating the marketing materials, which I kind of talked about, of doing videos or things like that. So that is a really quick like run through. These are the 8 key topics that we're looking at. We started working on this in November, and then we've pretty much have our solid draft done now. So, you know, fingers crossed, we should have this probably adopted by like late October. And yeah, happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Seth. I have a couple questions, but I want to give a chance to everyone else to ask first. If anyone has one. Okay. Is it your department and your team that's produced the report, or did you draw like the climate action plan? Was that when they solicited information from various stakeholders? Was that done through a collaborative fashion, or was it more your staff?
Collaborative fashion. So we probably did about like 30 stakeholder meetings. And then those were, and it was with a lot of like organizations. So like Latino Business Alliance, Business Oregon, PCUN, Sedcor, and others. So what we really did is we like went to other organizations that were working more closely on the ground with these groups. And that's then where those themes really got generated from. And then in addition to like, unlike the Climate Action Plan, which is a brand new plan, like we do have an existing economic development strategy. So some of it then was like taking those existing initiatives and then, you know, updating them or kind of taking them to the next step.
Okay, and then my second question is, and we talked about this last year about the broadband. I remember we even got some calls from the consultant that was hired by the city of Salem about what it would take and input. I know the city of Salem utilizes a lobby team, and that's the lobbying efforts resulted in funding for the navigation center, so on and so forth. How much of this integrates with potential lobbying efforts with the state that the city of Salem is investing in?
In terms of broadband, I don't think we've gotten that far yet. What I foresee kind of being our first steps is really connecting with internet service providers, seeing what they need, and then evaluating resources that are currently available. As you've probably seen, there's like a ton of money that's being released for broadband expansion. The problem for Salem is that a lot of that's for rural or for places that don't have the existing infrastructure yet. So Salem may not be eligible for some of that funding in that case. I would say overall, in terms of like lobbying efforts, just infrastructure money in general is critical. So I could see like broadband being part of a bigger efforts by the city to get more capital for infrastructure improvements.
Okay, thanks, Seth. Are there any other questions for Seth while he's here? Cherie?
So Seth, thank you so much for being here. I have new board members and I wanted them to know that we paid for a broadband study in the URA and got information as to the challenges and the type of infrastructure that we need within Riverfront. And basically one of the goals of Streetscape, one of the reasons why that became a high priority for the board was when we do streetscape improvements, actually more is done under the sidewalk that the public doesn't see versus what's on top of the sidewalk, because we wanted to make sure that we were putting in the infrastructure to address broadband. So I just wanted to let the board know, if you were new, that we as a group, we were looking into that a couple of years back and had money and funded a study. My question for you, Seth, is I think it would be interesting for the board to know if there's anything in downtown that you have gleaned in your outreach with the businesses in downtown that is interesting and that they might not know in regards to startups or what interest businesses might have in being in a downtown location.
That's a good question. I would, generally speaking, like our division tends to work more with like traded sector businesses, and we don't like focus as much on the downtown. I think COVID really changed that. If you look at, which businesses were most impacted, it's like leisure, hospitality, retail. So for me, really, I started like just over a year ago. Most of that last year, a lot of my work has been with our downtown businesses. And I think that will continue for us to work with them. I mean, I don't know if I have anything new that folks downtown would know. Sheree, I think you work closer with them, with those businesses, like on longer term issues. I think I've mostly been looking at, quick funding opportunities. So I would almost like throw that back at you to see, like what you're hearing.
Well, I just know that you and Annie have done, like with the cider, certain industries, we've reaped the benefits in downtown of some of them taking locations here, like Victory Club, and obviously we had 1859 cider, and we had, I'm gonna forget the name, but it was upstairs that made the bars, and they expanded to the point. So we've had some that have been kind of startups in some of the buildings in downtown that, again, you're new, but that Annie was working with, that eventually moved out and expanded and are now, something that you can buy in major grocery stores and stuff. So I wasn't sure if you knew of any, and obviously there for a while, people were trying to find co-working space. That was a big one. Maker space, that was a big one. I haven't heard of anything new, but I wasn't sure because of what we've gone through, if you have heard of anything. But it's okay. We won't go back and forth.
Sounds
we
good.
won't go back and forth. It was just, I thought, sometimes things, because you're right. Historically, because retail and commercial are not traded sector, where we're focusing on the job, a different type of economic development. We care about jobs, but that's a big piece of what you guys are doing. But I know that we've touched each other more recently in the last year. So I just wanted to see if there was anything you thought would be worthwhile to share, but you don't have to share anything.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to be working together probably more closely over the next few years than we have in the past. And then Live Bar, so you were talking about their great success story. Yeah, Live Bar is great. And then one of the things I think that we're hearing is like the need for like commercial kitchen space. I just talked to a business last week because due to COVID, startup businesses, I think are a little concerned about making like big investments right now or making like big risks right now. So, I was talking to Truffle Shuffle, which makes truffles. They've been going to like a lot of pop-up events. And they were one of a few businesses I've talked to that just need like commercial, they don't need a commercial space. What they were looking for was like storage. So it's like, look, we have all these like materials I need to make truffles, but we don't actually have a place to store them, which goes hand in hand then with like other businesses who need like a commercial space to do commercial kitchens. Did I ever say kitchen in there? Commercial kitchen space to do prepping of food, which could be like food trucks or pop-up food, or things like Truffle Shuffle, or another one like charcuterie board and sweets, that they put together these like charcuterie boards that you order. So they don't have like a brick and mortar storefront, but they do still need like that commercial kitchen space.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions for Seth, I think we can move forward to Kristen's citywide homeless update. Seth, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. Is happy to be here.
Hey everyone, good to be here. It's been a while since I have been to a DAB meeting, and we have quite a few new members since I was last at a DAB meeting. Some of you I know, some I haven't met yet, but I'm Kristen, I'm the Urban Development Director, so thank you for your time and participating on this. It's very important in the community to get the kind of input that you provide and the guidance that you provide. So here I am back again with more updates on a homeless situation in the city. It continues to be an ongoing issue and challenge that many departments in the city are involved in. We have an internal team that meets weekly to talk about issues throughout the community with a very dynamic response and shifting response to where we're seeing the greatest issues, you know. And through the summer, we've had a lot of focus out in parks, Cascade Gateway area, Wallace Marine. So we have one group within the city that is really just focused on public safety, public health cleanup, trash removal, you know, hygienic issues, those sorts of things, largely in parks and in areas adjacent to roads or other areas where we see large camps growing. We also have Gretchen Bennett, who was tasked right at the beginning of COVID. So I guess it would have been around March 20, April 20, when she was tasked with being the liaison for the city for homelessness, interacting with nonprofits, our businesses, and internal city departments to better coordinate a response. And for the last year and a half, Gretchen has worked tirelessly at trying to find solutions wherever they are. I think she's looked at under pretty much every rock that we have to find properties that would meet criteria for either internal or external shelter, to develop partners to do pallet homes or other sorts of temporary external shelter. We've made available for an 18-month duration tied to some property limitations, property that the Urban Renewal Agency acquired out on Portland Road for external and internal shelter. We have acquired a property for a navigation center, which is out off of Mission and 22nd, kind of near Public Works shops. We are partnering with Arches. It'll probably be spring before that is up and running. Because there's a number of capital improvements, building out a kitchen, showers, more bathrooms, that sort of stuff inside the building before we can make it operational. So that is going to be a key piece in our strategy moving forward in how we address homelessness. And what we have been really focusing on, and it takes time to get all these pieces into place, is more of a system instead of just, so that we have more of a continuum of a system. We started the HRAP program, our housing rental assistance program in the city, I guess about 4 years ago now, where we were focusing on the hardest to house, those that had more serious mental health issues, physical health issues, long-term homeless, to help to prioritize getting those individuals into homes, roofs over their heads. And we have been funding that from the city general fund for the last few years. And that program has been under the Housing Authority in partnership with Arches. We brought on a property, Redwood Crossings, out in Northeast Salem, that is had a kind of a homeless priority for housing in that location. So we have a lot of formerly homeless or HRAP clients there and in scattered sites around the city. So that's sort of one leg of the stool that we've been focusing on. And then the navigation center is another very important piece to that whole system, because a lot of individuals we're finding through our HRAP program that have been unsheltered for a long period of time, it is a very difficult transition for them to go from a camp or street environment into an apartment environment or shared housing situation. They have been living for a long time without rules, without structure. And so the navigation center is kind of an in-between step to help people stabilize, to help them refamiliarize themselves with a lot of, kind of basic responsibilities or things that we take care of in life that maybe they haven't been for the last, 5, 6, 10 years. Things like laundry, that kind of stuff. So and also to help on the path for sobriety or mental health stability. So that's another reason that the navigation center is so important, because a large percentage of the people that have been houseless for a number of years, there are addiction issues, there are mental health issues, or those issues are overlaid. And the navigation center will be a place where people can shelter and have access to different services to help them through sobriety, to help them with the mental health assistance and just the basic life skills assessments that are needed to be able to stabilize in a housed environment. So that's been acquired. We've got ARPA money that has come through the federal government that we're using for some property acquisitions like the navigation center, and money from the state focusing on operations of the navigation center. So like I said, target date of the spring of getting that up and running, which will happen about the same time that our Portland Road facility will be closing. That facility could only house individuals for 18 months because of a DEQ limitation on that property because of existing contamination. So we have those pieces. Downtown, Arches, we built out an area for sobering center at Arches that could handle 6 or 7 individuals at a time. We built that out a couple of years ago. It hasn't operated. We haven't had the funding to operate that. And then also with COVID, we haven't pursued the funding for that, but we are going to take that back through our lobbyists to the legislature in the upcoming session to try to get funding to operate the sobering center, because that's another piece in that continuum to help people, transition from on the streets to getting sober, to getting into the navigation center, then to becoming housed. So that would be potentially an added service that may occur in the downtown area at Arches. But it would be a very limited capacity. Like I said, 6 to 7 individuals max at any time that could be managed in a sobering center environment there, I believe. I know that Cherie's had conversations with you about the former UGM property and preparing to move forward with demolition this winter there, and going out seeking development partners there. And I believe she's mentioned to you that we will be looking at retaining, which will be I'm looking across the street here to get my orientation right, which would be the southeast portion from the alley to commercial at the south end of that block for an affordable housing project in partnership either with the housing authority or a nonprofit to develop some affordable housing in the downtown core, and then putting the rest of the property out to market that for redevelopment. And I know the council would like to see a mix of some affordable units within the remaining development, not necessarily deeply subsidized units, but a mix that would target at about maybe 80% of the average median income. So those are the activities that we have going on downtown relating to homelessness, I know that there have been some rumors circulating that the city's buying, I've heard myself, rumors that we're buying the Penny's building for a shelter. That's not the case. I've heard it about other buildings as well. We don't have any other buildings in the downtown area that we are pursuing for shelter. I think those rumors were probably tied around the navigation center, which we ended up finding that site that was outside of the downtown core. But if you have any rumors that you'd like to ask about, I'm here, or any other questions.
Kristen, on the UGM site, the affordable housing piece, so two questions, will that be a separate project? I think that's what you said. And then the other question, will there be flexibility in terms of working with a developer in case that's not the ideal location for them? I mean, in terms of like, it'd be better if their building occupied that corner and the affordable,
So we are doing some lot line adjustments right now, specifically to carve out that piece for the affordable housing piece. And there's a reason for that, tied to any affordable housing development will involve federal funds, and properties closer to the bridge or to Front Street will present some additional challenges in using federal funds because of the environmental review process we have to go through. So that's why that piece was selected as the one that we would retain for an affordable housing project, because it would have the fewest environmental review issues.
And so would that's a separate process and a separate project that'll have its own timeline? And
yes, exactly. Yeah.
So
now, if we just to add on to that, Aaron, sorry, Josh, if we had a developer partner, for example, I'm just tossing this out there because I've had conversations with this developer about housing authorities that they've worked in with other communities. Codes that just built up on State Street. Okay, they have worked with housing authorities in other communities. So whether it's them or some other developer, there may be a developer out there that would be interested in doing all of it, including the nonprofit or the lower income portion of it. And we would be open to that.
Just to expand on that, in the interim, if it's going to be a separate project on a separate timeline, it would be fenced and graveled and waiting for.
Right, everything will be coming down this winter and we'll be doing the site prep.
Okay. And then and I might have missed it already, so I apologize if you're repeating yourself, but the decision to preserve some pad site for affordable is derived from staff, kind of like, we need to have this part of the plan.
Well, so the decision to keep part of it affordable was driven by council and community interest in retaining the existing UGM building as a shelter. So this came up for discussion in the spring as the UGM was preparing to move out of that location. There was significant community and council interest in retaining that building to provide additional shelter capacity. We took a look at the building. We had our building official and fire take a look at the building, and shared with council that that building is not the best way to provide these services or meet this need. That it is structurally obsolescent. It would require a significant amount of investment to make it safe for ongoing use. I mean, there's a reason that the mission moved out of that building and moved into something new. And so in having this discussion with the council about shelter versus housing, we were presenting that while there is shelter need in the community, we need shelter need we need to meet those shelter needs kind of around the community, not all downtown. We have shelter capacity downtown. But in addition to having the shelter capacity, we need to have locations for people to move into as they are transitioning through that continuum from a camp or street to a navigational center into housing, right? And that our HRAP program, you know, we struggle to have, to find enough landlords to house people. And so, yeah, we've got a shelter shortage, but we also have an affordable housing shortage. And the better use for this site is to blend in affordable housing units in the larger redevelopment.
I see.
So that was the dialogue that we had with them.
It's just, my comment is, anyone else feel free to chime in. In my purview in commercial real estate and development, in the land use consulting that we do at our firm, I've seen it time and time again, unfortunately, in municipalities that you don't have enough input, like the good intentions, the right intentions, but the function and the practicality of a developer coming in and saying, I mean, it's all great. Of course, we need affordable housing. You know, and there's other ways to achieve that goal rather than, okay, well, we need to preserve this box or this plat of land. You know, it might mean the difference between ruling out a host of potential developers that have big visions that maybe alternatively come in with their proposals and say, well, we want to dedicate X% of the building, like in some other municipalities like Portland, to the affordable and intermix it with market rate versus having it be in one segmented, almost segregated area.
So that is proposed for the remainder of the site, that affordable housing would be mixed in on the remainder of the redevelopment. There was significant interest in the council for there being a housing authority project downtown. Housing authority we're really busy with other projects right now. And I think there's a lot of housing authority interest in maybe partnering with somebody else in a development there. But I think that I'm not going to say that council wouldn't at some point in the future, if we found the right partner, wouldn't be open to changing that plan. Okay. But right now, to move forward with this, we needed to have a commit to them that we would have affordable housing there if we're giving up shelter.
And you're saying the way that it was arrived at would be, okay, then we need to put a designated lot during the lot line partition process and to clear that.
Yes, and then as we're doing our RFQ, like I said, if we had a developer, you know, a bigger developer that came in and said, okay, we understand that you want to retain this piece for affordable housing. We'd like to propose that we acquire all of this and that we would mix in X percentage, maybe, you know, 30% of the units instead of 20%, something like that. We would certainly take that back to council.
Got it. So it's not set in stone, but that's the way to achieve the criteria, or.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'd say affordable housing on that block is set in stone. It's easiest to digest right now, having a set aside for affordable housing in a specific location. Okay. That's how we're going to proceed right now. But as we're negotiating for the rest of it, you know, the rest of it's all going to be subject to a development agreement. So if there was interest in from a larger developer in approaching it a little bit differently, it's negotiable, and we can take that back to the council and say, you know, we have a developer that has an idea that actually might work better on this site than the way, you know, the way we started with this.
And I hate to be the only one talking. I could really go all day on it, but it's such an important project. And to have it go to council for council unilaterally to make the decision is, I don't know. When I go back to my experience of working in other municipalities, for example, there's one project in particular. It's failed 3 times in a row because something that was set was prevented itself, and there wasn't enough input and a variety of thought on the decision-making body that determined this overlay zone in this case. And it would seem prudent to me, much like a downtown advisory board that exists, to make recommendations to council because of our mix of our perspectives, that the same type of methodology, at least it should be considered to make recommendations for at least this site to council, and having, because I'm not aware of any people that have real estate development experience on council, and that is a critical voice in, or architectural experience is so essential in making those decisions. That if the policy is just being made on criteria.
You know, I mean, that's why largely, other than requiring a mix of affordable units in the overall project, which we have done like in our single property urban renewal area, and through other mechanisms requiring a mix of affordable units in exchange for an incentive of some type, right? That's not unusual. But other than that, we have really tried to leave this very wide open to let the developers come forward to us with what they think is the best market solution.
Love it.
So we've tried not to be overly prescriptive. Sheree?
So Josh, we took a staff report on the 13th to the agency board to kind of walk through what Kristen's talking about. And all the things that we went through as a board, where we listed those priorities, serve as a catalyst, a model for revitalization and redevelopment of a key site, serve as a model of mixed use, mixed income housing, support bicycle, benefit local businesses, incorporate green building practices. None of that has gone away. None of that. All that work that we did as a board to identify those key things that were important in what we wanted to see there, all of that went in front of the agency board. We didn't lose any of that. And setting aside those lots, we're not selling them, which is why I think Kristen's saying there isn't anything that would preclude somebody coming in and saying, hey, you know, I know you want affordable housing. We can, you have it. I mean, we have it in our, what we wanted to see there. We wanted to see a mix of income because we want a lot of different options for people for housing. So it will still be ours to be able to entertain a response to the RFQ, because like Kristen said, the Housing Authority doesn't really have capacity right now. And I would say 50% of the developers who have outreached and said they have an interest in that site all do affordable housing. And a lot of them work with nonprofits. So I think that's part of it too. We've already seen where the interest is coming from as far as what somebody might want to put there. But I just want the board to know I haven't lost, and the agency saw all those things that we identified were what we felt were important on that site. I don't know if that's of any value, but I'm feeling right now I need to reshare that with you because we just shared it with the agency board on the 13th in an information report.
Thanks for affirming that. You know, there's always just concerns when it comes to a process like this, and it's so important for downtown. And obviously, as downtown advisory board members and citizens here in Salem, we want to see the best thing for the block. But ultimately, all decisions land with council and on their lap. And it's going to be up to these developers, subject to the RFQ, to substantiate why they think theirs is the best or the most compatible with the criteria. So thank you.
Well, and Josh, you know, even as we get those responses, you know, in that next step in negotiating a development agreement with them, you know, then we have a lot of opportunity as well through that negotiation process for the development agreement to talk about some of the placemaking aspects, you know, or other things that would be of interest in this block.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking at the clock. We have two minutes for the remainder of our time here. And we've got another thing on our information reports. Frankly, we don't need to talk about that right now in a minute and a half. Kristen, thanks so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Cherie, everyone, do we just want to free for all what's happening downtown in our 60 seconds? Anything for the good of the order, anyone?
I just want to tell people that there is so much interest, and I'm sure Josh and Jordan can speak to it too, but you know, on Salem Center, there's been 10 to 12 offers to buy that. That's a significant level of interest in wanting to invest in downtown. And of course, you all know that Penny's was just purchased, and there's businesses going in, and there's increased activity for the TJ Maxx site. So I really think that Salem is a city now that people all across the country are interested in locating to and being a part of. And so I just want to share that. And then I'm trying to think what's on the ground floor. A dance studio on Commercial Street. I toured this week the 2 new units that Angela Jones put upstairs to that particular building. And if you're in the alley, she did a really good job of the color scheme and the materials that are back there. So if you walk down that alley behind Firestone, you'll see it. And then Charles had mentioned to me, because his building's looking beautiful, that he's open to taking advisory board members on tours if we want to coordinate that. Is that still a good offer, Charles?
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to add, we should be wrapped up inside of 30 days here. We expect occupancy, by the middle of October. And so it's much safer now. Cherie braved it earlier, but happy to show anybody anytime, or a big group effort.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back. And then I think the only thing that has come up in this last week is the tables and chairs and tents that are have been on street for quite a while. They have to be removed by October 1st. So except for Kitchen on Court has a platform, so that will stay, but everything else will go. And then, as we've talked, going forward, the only thing that will be allowed in on-street parking spaces would be a platform that gets a revocable license and is built to meet the design standards that the city has. So we know we're protecting the people on the platform and the cars and everything else. So I hear a lot, when is that stuff coming down? I wanted you to know that's next Friday. I think that was it for me, unless you have a question for me.
I'm just going to jump in and say the deadline is next Friday. As we have often found with deadlines, people ignore them. So I don't know that they will all magically be down next Friday, but hopefully a number of them will be.
They've been given lots of notice.
They have been.
Well, if there's nothing else, I think to be respectful of everyone's time, we should adjourn here. Then we could talk all day. And I would definitely be open for a dab field trip to see everybody in person to Charles's place. You're getting a lunch, right, Charles? Pizza dab pizza day?
Sure thing.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.